Welcome, travelers. I'm Josh.
I'm Glenn.
And I'm Lewanika. And this is Tabletop Journeys, where we will be your not-so-humble guides on the quest for RPG adventures.
Here at Tabletop Journeys, we are all devoted role players and storytellers at heart, and we absolutely love sharing our passion with you. On our show, we feature diverse tabletop RPG systems, demonstrating them through actual plays and breaking down the rules to provide you with tips, tools, and techniques to help you navigate them. We also love bringing the content creators behind these games into the studio to give you a peek behind the curtain with relevant and insightful interviews.
Let us help you get the most out of your story, no matter what game world or system you're playing, because detailed settings, heroic characters, diverse NPCs, and a focus on story over rules can make any campaign legendary. Now, here's a message from friends of the show.
Do you tire of always handing out the same old +1 and +2 weapons to your martial player characters in your 5th edition games? Are the Flame Tongue and the Frostbrand making campaign after campaign just tepid and bland? Perhaps your players need some equipment from the Old Sword Repository. Now on Kickstarter, Old Sword Repository 2022 is the 3rd book in the series. Each book is a small, digest-sized softcover with 30 or more magic items in them, mostly swords. What started in 2020 with Sword Temper prompts turned into a successful Kickstarter campaign last year, with the 2020 and 2021 books both available on DriveThruRPG. Has led to another Kickstarter this year with even more weapons with which to allow your Murder Hobo players to eviscerate the dungeon denizens that you put before them. With fantastic, unique art from 5 different artists, and rules for each one written by myself, Old Sword Repository 2022 promises to bring powerful weapons and treasure to your games, the likes of which your players haven't seen before.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode. We're really excited to have another repeat guest, one of a growing list of folks that have been on the show more than once. But before we bring him on to go ahead and talk to him, Mr. Lewanika Miller, Mr. Glenn Myers. Good evening, gentlemen. Lewanika, I see you in your Rising Phoenix Con t-shirt. I know you are out repping the brand, as the youths say, this weekend. How'd that go?
So wonderfully awesome. This was a great convention. There are things we do in the course of this whole podcast journey we're on that are all about reinforcing what we love about the hobby, the things that excite us and build on our creative energies. This was a convention that was really all about that. I got to see vendors that I've actually just started to build growing friendships with, and folks that I've met several times now at many local area cons. I got to hang out with some close friends, including friend of the show, Jay Moores, he and his wife. Just being able to be in the community and be with this budding found family is just awesome. Add to that, at my table, I had a couple returning players from the last convention I went to, and to hear the words, "Once we saw your name, we knew we had to get into this game," from that particular couple was very humbling and amazing all at once. One of the 2 members of that couple, she was the one who played Captain Clank in my Eberron game. So she was my Warforged in that one. And this time she played an intelligence officer medic for Army men, and it was a fantastic game.
That's
so many good things. I will talk about a lot of that in an upcoming project that the audience will get to see in the very, very near future. I've actually already recorded some stuff for that, including some of my experiences at the convention. So looking forward to it. And
cool.
But short answer, had a blast, had a great time. Can't wait to meet up with folks again, and absolutely killed it at karaoke on Saturday.
That is the rumor. So,
yeah.
How about you, Mr. Myers? Let's jump to our favorite game. Where is Glenn tonight?
Oh, no new exciting answers to the game of Where is Glenn this week yet. I am still in Carrollton, Virginia, which is Virginia Beach adjacent. We've been here for about the last month, but we leave at the end of the week. So next exciting. Tuesday will be a much more exciting answer. Yeah. I'm not even sure where I'll be. Could be Pennsylvania, could be New York. Who knows? We'll find out.
Take a wrong turn at Albuquerque, could wind up anywhere. Yeah,
exactly.
Cool. Yeah.
But no, I'm doing great down here in Virginia, though. I got to run Monster of the Week last night to finish out one of my only sessions so far that didn't finish and wrap up in a single session. They had a blast finishing up Dream Away the Time, one of the starting adventures from the Monster of the Week core book. And tomorrow night, I'm looking forward to Savage Worlds, run by friend of the show, Marty Napier.
I am jealous, as always, that you get to go ahead and play Savage Worlds. But I got to say, I am so super looking forward to our Daggerheart playthrough.
I was working on the first adventure for Daggerheart tonight.
Yeah,
I have lots of things I'd love to share with you, but I can't because...
I know, because I'll be there. You'll get to share them with me shortly enough, as I get to play my Clank Tank Templar.
Straight up, that is the hardest thing about being a storyteller for me. Not giving away my plot ideas when I come up with something really cool because I just want to share them with people. And the next thing you know, everybody knows.
And speaking about play testing and beta testing and running through stuff, without any further ado, then let's go ahead and introduce tonight's guest, who is adding to the list of people who have appeared on the show more than once. Although I think that this is probably the largest gap from appearance 1 to appearance number 2 that we've had, because it was several years ago. We were talking about this off air. It was before the OGL kerfluffle that we had tonight's guest, Alex Vigna, on. Alex, welcome back to Tabletop Journeys, first of all.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. Good to see everybody again.
It's really great to see you again. And so last time we talked, you were talking about your Ravenloft module, Lamortia, the kind of Frankenstein-inspired Ravenloft module. So before we get into peppering you mercilessly with questions, what the hell have you been up to since then?
Playing a lot of games other than D&D. As we said, last time we talked was like early fall before the OGL incident. And obviously a lot has changed in this scene since then. At the time, I would have said I was a pretty diehard D&D 5e fanboy, so self-diagnosed, and was pretty content to have kept playing it forever, making stuff for it rather than off of it. And now here I am making my own big D20 fantasy system. Yeah, a lot has changed in that regard. Yeah. Been playing a bunch of other games, played Cyberpunk, played Lancer, played Monster of the Week, as mentioned earlier. So yeah, been busy.
Yeah.
Rapidly becoming one of my favorites, Monster of the Week.
It's a great one.
Yeah, and I was going to say, too, in the game that we're going to be talking about tonight, hearing you say that you've been playing a lot of Lancer, there's a lot of Lancer in your latest game. And the one that we're going to be talking about tonight, and the one that we're going to be featuring in an actual play here coming up very shortly, Big Adventure Game. Again, before we dive into the questions, give us a little bit on Big Adventure Game.
Yeah, so Big Adventure Game, the gist is that when I left D&D, I tried out Pathfinder, and Pathfinder's great, but it wasn't scratching the itch for me. So I'm like, I still want to play in this sort of fantasy realm, but for whatever reason, Pathfinder wasn't doing it for me. And other rules light games like a Dungeon World also didn't do it for me. I still wanted something fairly heavy, specifically in my medieval fantasy. That's just me. That's just my cup of tea. So I set out on this sort of journey to build my own. And basically the sort of elevator pitch for it is most of us who played 5e D&D were playing in that little sweet spot between like level 3 to like level 12, where everything just works, right? At the low levels, people complain about their characters feeling too squishy. At the high levels, balance becomes nigh impossible, and it just isn't super supported by the developers. I wanted to make a game where you stay in that mid-range, but there's still progression, right? But the balance does not wildly shift out of that realm. And a familiar sort of action structure that people can be comfortable with.
I really liked what we read, and we'll get into it when we start delving into questions, but I really picked up on some of those influences from some of those games that you had mentioned you were playing, and I picked up some other interesting coincidences, and I'm going to ask some questions about those specifically because I'm wondering if they came from certain other influences as well. So I'm really interested in the process. So I hope between the three of us, we get into some good questions about the process of developing your own system and where it came from and such. But I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I really liked what I was seeing. I was very intrigued. I'm not sure about the rest of the team here, but I started with the setting book. Then went back for
interesting order. Yeah.
And then went to look at the cheat sheet and then went to the player's handbook. That's the order in which I did it.
All right.
I think Josh is like, of course he started with the background material.
Of course he did.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
But coming at it from that aspect, man, a lot of good thought went into this, and we'll get into more. But
cool.
And I got to say, I really appreciated part of your elevator pitch where you're talking about staying in that mid-range, because I hadn't been able to completely put my finger on it as I was reading through the rule set, but I kept coming up with questions about, okay, now how do I advance this? And I'd find the answer, and everything was very kit and fit on top of each other without saying, okay, now you're level 18 and you have 7,000 hit points.
Yep.
That was one of my favorite things.
Firmly agree. Gentlemen, fan roll dice to the ready. Let's see how this is going to work out tonight. So I see Luinic actually has his dice here, so this is good. I don't have to riff as long.
I did a thing so not to get picked on, and I still get picked on?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, y'all. I see where this is going.
You've been friends with us for how long? You already knew where this was going.
I did, in fact, know. I am practically a prognosticator.
Right,
a prognosticator who can't roll for
11.
8?
Right. An 8. All
Solidly
right, so
in the
means fabulous. That means that I get the first question.
I think I have high reflexes and high sense. So in honor of Big Adventure Game, I'm going to add 5 to my roll and have a 16 instead.
A bold claim.
It is a bold claim, but because we are all immune to bull, I'm going to call disadvantage on that roll. So why don't you throw it down again, sir?
No, I think based on your previous statement when you were complaining about being picked on, that you actually expressed vulnerability to bull, not immune.
Is bull a damage or a condition?
I think it could be both.
The right word.
Yeah, I think if he tries to throw it, it's a damage type, but if we call him on it, then it's a condition trapped in one's own bullshit.
Exactly.
Is that? And I'm from Southie, Glenn. My luck is through the freaking roof, so you can throw.
All right, so that's going to give you a lot of hero points that you can add.
We're really going to appreciate all these inside jokes.
Once they actually read the rules exactly
to your initiative roll and beat me. Does that work on initiative, Alex? Can you use 0 points on initiative?
It doesn't specifically say that you can't, but I would probably say
talks about skill checks and attack rolls.
Yeah, I think no.
Okay, cool. All right, 10 minutes into this episode, we've already broken his system. Well done, Glenn. That's nice. Yeah, no, thanks.
I might have to double check.
So I guess we're done here for this week. I guess we'll.
It is a beta. It's important to announce. It is currently in beta as of this recording, and probably when the episode comes out.
This is one of the things we do.
And I love beta testing games. It's not about finding things and pointing out, oh, you've done this wrong. It's about, this is wicked cool.
Yeah.
Did you think of this? Because
I'm really looking forward to playing
an opportunity to try to help influence and make it better.
All right, I'm going to dive right into my question here. So we kind of alluded to this at the beginning about how you came from writing modules and things for D&D, and I think that right now in the post-OGL era, we are in a kind of a blessed time where a lot of games that are influenced strongly by Dungeons and Dragons, but are not Dungeons and Dragons. I'm thinking about Daggerheart. I'm thinking about Tales of the Valiant coming out by Kobold. I'm thinking the product that MCDM is putting together. They all promise this D&D-like experience that isn't Dungeons and Dragons. And I think that when I read through Big Adventure Game, I can see the fingerprints of D&D in here, but you've added a ton of kind of crunchy elements to it. Would that be a fair categorization, first of all? Do you think that the fingerprints of D&D are in here? And was that kind of an active part of the thought process when you were putting this together? And if not, what was the driving principle behind it?
Yeah, for sure. I wanted it to be a welcoming to people who have been playing D&D. I wanted people to be like, oh, okay, I get it. If the only other game they've played is D&D, right? I kept advantage and disadvantage just because they roll off the tongue. People have a good understanding of them. And there's a few other things here and there, just the way weapon damage works and all these different things. to the point that I do credit the now Creative Commons system reference document, the SRD, on the credits page. But yeah, very much I want that bit of D&D DNA in there out of respect for it, because I stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And also because I do genuinely love the game, and I know other people do, and I want to welcome them in.
So the crunchier bits that you added on to that D&D model, things like, and I have other questions about this, things like expanding the stat set, sticking
Conversion
to
tables?
conversion table, exactly. Separating out things like active role play versus descriptive role play. A lot of very detailed guidance in how to navigate through part of the game, stuff like that. Where do you think they came from?
Yeah. But basically everything in the book that is fully original and added by me is either a response to something in D&D or a different game that I didn't like, or a attempt at recreating something in D&D or another game that I did like.
Yeah.
The reason that there is a magic stat and you don't just key off of sense, charisma, or mind, intelligence, wisdom, essentially, is because I have had players at my tables in the past who said, hey, can I be a smart warlock? Can I just be a warlock and key off of intelligence instead? And it worked totally fine. It didn't break the game. There's no reason it needed to exist. I've heard stories online. I wouldn't recommend doing this in 5e, but of the dumb wizard, the big dumb orc wizard who just has a bunch of spells that don't call for saving throws. So I wanted to make magic. That's its own thing. And ultimately, it's all in service of making characters customizable. We'll get into this, I'm sure, but there's no classes in big adventure games. So everything that is a bit more detailed and customizable is because I don't want you to think strictly in terms of classes. Cool. And I want you to make your character truly your own and different from one campaign to the next.
Nice. All right, Clint.
Perfect. The end of your answer segues perfectly into my first question, which was going to be all about the customization that you added to the player characters. Class isn't the right word, but base, and how they're built
kind
up.
Templates? Maybe? But yeah.
But there aren't templates. You can make whatever you want, and I freaking love it. Because you've created a system, and at first when I read the line, there aren't any classes, that it was all going to be kit. I'm like, how are you going to make all that work and have it be balanced, etc.? But from what I read, I really loved the way you've put it together. So you've got a game where there are no classes, and players get to create literally anything they want by kitting different skills, features, and whether or not you cast spells together. And you can buy new features. Instead of experience points, you get improvement points, and that's what you use to buy them all. That entire advancement system I found fascinating, and I absolutely loved it. The way you broke class features and feats into the same category, where now people are buying the abilities that they want. So you could buy something that would traditionally in another game like D&D 5e count as a paladin ability onto your thief league type character or anything else. With that, though, there's a lot of preamble to my question. I apologize.
All good.
With that, though, comes something that you continued throughout the book that I also really enjoyed, where you gave people a little bit of guidance. You gave them a chart at each major intersection that said, okay, if you want to play a character that's like a bard, these are the pieces from this section that I recommend to help people begin to wrap their mind around how those parts will all fit together. And then the fact that anybody can use magic, there's no class based on it. If you set your stats so that you have enough magic to have spell points, you can use magic, is wonderful. So my question in the end, after all of that rambling, is could you, better than I could, because I've only read it once and did not write it, give us and everybody listening a synopsis of the classless system and how that works and how you kit your character together and some of the feedback you've gotten through playtesting for how much people liked it, what they thought was amazing, or anything that you struggled with and had to adjust.
Yeah, I guess I'll just speed run through how you would make a character, right? First thing, you would pick a lineage, which is like our race, species, whatever. Are you an elf or a dwarf or whatever? Start with that. That's just a short list of things. The next thing you do is your attributes, strength, reflex, so forth. And that's a point buy. You start with -2 and everything. You can get up to 5 at character creation. You can get up to 8 eventually. And in making that part of the system, I realized that math is hard. Not everybody wants to do math. I was like, okay, let me build some sort of templates. Let me make a rogue and see where I would put the points if I was going to make a rogue, quote unquote. using this point buy. And I have that in the book. It's labeled as an assassin. You can grab that template and run with it, or you can do the point buy and make your own custom thing, or you can take the template and then just fine tune from there, move one number up, move another number down, right? And that process repeats for your training points in your skills, right? It's just a point buy. You put a couple points in archery, you put a couple points in light melee weapons, you put a couple points in stealth. And again, I have a list of recommended, are you going to be an assassin? Just take these numbers, skip the math, forget about it if you don't want to do that. If you want to get crazy and custom, go for it. Same thing goes for spellcasting. All the classes, or quote unquote classes, that should have spells. I have a list of recommended spells for you, but you can just pick whatever you want. And then same thing at equipment and features, just a list of recommended features. That was a lot.
Big question.
It is. So some of the early playtesting that happened with that was that I just ran some of my friends through character creation. We didn't even play. I was just like, make a character. Tell me if anything seems weird or hard. And the only templates I had were the ones for the point buys at the beginning, the attributes and the training points. And they were like, this is great. You should have this at every step. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, you're totally right. So I made the spell list in the equipment section. I made, here's what you should have in your backpack if you're making an assassin, so that you don't have to do the math on buying everything if you don't want to do the math on buying everything. Some players love that, and they want to get really deep into customization. And that is right there for you if you want to do it. It's what I would do if I were playing, but I understand that not everybody wants to spend 150 silver worth of buying arrows. I get it.
How granular
totally
do you want to get? Is up to you.
Right. Yeah. So exactly. Across every point of the system, how granular you want to get is up to you. And you're not really punished for not getting granular. You're just maybe a little bit less customized. But it's easy to just take the templates again and bump a number up or down somewhere.
Another great way to look at that particular piece is if you're new to the system, run with the suggestions to help you
exactly
learn it, and then start your customization after you've got a handle on it. And you're
to that point, people say about 5th edition, about Pathfinder, that it's impossible to make a bad character unless you're maybe taking like a completely unedited 4 Elements monk. It's really hard to make a bad character by accident.
Have you seen the 2014 Ranger?
Yeah, OG Ranger, pre-Tasha's Ranger, post-Tasha's Ranger, great, love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to make a bad character in a class-based system because they've built the kit for you. You could, in theory, make a bad character in Big Adventure Game if you just put one training point into every skill. You're not particularly great at everything. Wouldn't do you a lot of good. The templates are there to protect new players from that mistake. So they're like, oh, I want to make an assassin. I don't know. I've never rolled a dice before. You just take the assassin. Boom. Done.
As a player who has an affinity for crunch, but an aversion to the math necessary for crunch.
Right.
I truly enjoy the fact that having a template is a good base. You made a very key and salient point that I don't want to get lost in this wonderful conversation, because it's something that when you said it, it hit me and I'm like, oh, that's why I was liking it so much. If you are building a character for 5e and you go with the prescripted loadout for equipment, that is significantly more things than if you tried to buy each of those things with the amount of money given. So you are punished for customization when it comes to straight equipment. And you called out the fact that you're not punished in this system because you've effectively just done this in this one way from scratch. So you could actually, by rule, build the template. So that
100%.
So that you can take this template and say, you know what, I like this assassin. I, however, don't like this particular weapon. I want my assassin to use whips, not knives. Or I want my assassin to actually have this thing, not that thing. Or what have you.
You want to build a thief, but not an assassin.
So you can...
Similar, but different.
You can swap out a piece here or a piece there. So the template allows you to do the crunch without having to do all the picayune parts of the crunch. And I really appreciate that kind of attention, because that little thing with equipment, I absolutely picked out the very first 2014 character I made. And it has just been a stick in my side for a while, and such that I am constant. Anybody who's GM me when making characters, I ask the question, hey, I know this is more than I would get. Can I get this? Can I get that? Can I get this? Can I get that? And I'm not looking for power. I'm looking for something that makes sense for the character, which the system doesn't allow. And I like the fact that you're considering those factors.
Yeah, for sure. And again, to that point, getting into the nitty gritty, every character gets 150 of the money to buy their equipment, but not all the equipment packages are worth the same money. You get the leftover money back. I think the wizard ends up with 60 money back because they're just wearing a robe. If you want to spend that, you can go spend it before the game starts. It's all 100% genuine. There's no buy two, get one free buried in here.
I don't know why the idea of a wizard just wearing a robe, like he just stepped out of the bath, is amusing me so much, but this is where my head is right now.
So you're in like a terry cloth pink bathrobe there, Josh, with a belt?
I'm thinking with like bunny slippers.
With
like,
slippers, yeah.
Let's, again, desperately try to go ahead and keep this on track. Let's round out round one here with you, Lewanika. Carry on into your question.
Along the same lines as the equipment piece, digging into some of the mechanical bits of the game, I noticed that the action economy had all the hallmarks of the 5e system, but some really interesting changes. Pathfinder 2 went a certain way with their action economy. It is at one point somewhat reminiscent of that, but in another way, less so. It feels less crunchy than Pathfinder, but it feels somewhat more freeing and, in my estimation, a little more natural than the 5e action economy. As opposed to me talking about how a combat round would go and how the action economy works, I was wondering if you could give our audience a little treatise on that part of the game.
I do have a whole page in the book dedicated to like, here's just an infographic of how a turn works. And so basically the way a turn goes.
Print that page out and hand it out to everybody.
Yeah.
Brilliant, by the way. Let me just go ahead and say that too.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You roll initiative. It's your turn. You have your movement. That works like D&D or most other games where it's just however many feet, 5-foot squares assumed, right? And you can do that in between actions or after, before, whatever. And then you take either a full action or 2 quick actions. And full credit where credit is due, that is almost exactly the exact structure that Lancer uses, which is sort of the main inspiration. And of course, there's free actions for a few edge cases as well. What I have there then on another page is a list of here's everything that takes a full action. Most spells are a full action. And then here's everything that takes a quick action. The way that we do attacking is that an attack is a quick action. Anybody can attack twice if they feel like it, much like Pathfinder, to Pathfinder's credit. And again, like Pathfinder, if you attack multiple times, those extra attacks are not as accurate. The way we do it here is very simple, is if your second quick action is also an attack, you have disadvantage. If you use both of them to attack, it's disadvantage on that second one. And that's the main crux of everything. You have a reaction in between rounds. And we also have a mechanic called rushing, where when you rush, after you've resolved all your normal actions, you take one more quick action, and then after that quick action has resolved, you get a point of exhaustion in our exhaustion system. And yeah, that's the action economy. The sort of catalyst for that is that I felt like with the Pathfinder action economy, 3 felt like a lot sometimes, and you had this sort of 3-tiered thing where you're like, wait, is that thing that I wanted to do 1, 2, or 3 actions? It's a lot to remember sometimes. On the flip side, in D&D, you had actions, just 1 action, and then a bonus action. And a lot of times, certain character builds, you just did not have a bonus action. And it felt crappy to not have a bonus action a lot of the time. And a lot of the meta builds really abused bonus actions, Spiritual Weapon being like the king of bonus action things to do, right? So this way, everybody's got the same number of actions. If you can't think of anything else to do with that second quick action, go swing for an extra attack, do a defend, move a little bit more. There's always something on the table for you to do.
I really like that. It just felt natural. And I love moving an attack from a full action to a quick action. It is an inspired choice. I'm not familiar with Lancer. This is, in fact, the first time I've heard of the game.
I do recommend it. It's a fun time.
Good.
Yeah. Also very crunchy, so for anyone listening. But
yeah, but I really like moving it to that spot. That just fills me with all kinds of goodness because I grew up watching the 70s version of the Three Musketeers and reruns of Errol Flynn movies and all these kind of action movies where the stars are bouncing all around and doing all these crazy, exciting things. And some of those things, with the exception of very few specific builds or class, subclass options, very hard to replicate in the standard 5e game. I know Pathfinder allows that replication a little bit more easily, but that's a lot of lifting and a lot of things to do to get something that, to me, should just be more fundamental.
Yeah.
And
it's not that hard to swing a sword twice in 6 seconds. It's not that hard.
Whether or not you'll do it accurately is represented by the disadvantage factor.
Absolutely. And if you go to swing it a third time in that same 6 seconds,
then now you're tiring yourself out.
Now you're getting tired. And I love including that into the...
And before anyone freaks out, I can't make my fighter who can attack twice, there is a feature you can take called Quick Attacker that just removes that rule for you. Yeah. You can do 2 quick action attacks, both of them at normal 1d20.
And I actually love the way you built into the action economy ways to work around that with the precedent that specific trumps general. So you have the general rule of the disadvantage versus the specifics of the rule that negates it, particularly because you already brought up the one with dual wielding, because I hated and continue to hate 5e's take on dual wielding. The one coming in their new release, I like better. They're using a light weapon property free attack like you are, which I think is fantastic, which we haven't actually talked about. So instead of me just talking about it with everybody being confused, if you dual wield, you can make that third attack, because when you attack with your main weapon, you can free attack with a light weapon in your second, in your offhand.
They're offhand, non-dominant.
Without additional bonuses to the damage, but you don't have any penalties to hit.
Right. And then there are features to enhance that to make it just as reliable as your main hand, so forth.
Just like the dual wielder feat from
similar.
The
very
dual
similar
wielder feature that's similarly worded and lets you get that action back. One thing I wasn't sure on, so I'm going to ask a follow-up question since I'm thinking about it now. Can you make that second offhand attack off of both quick attacks?
I believe you only do it once per turn. Yeah, once per turn in parentheses there. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Otherwise, if 4 attacks, it gets to be a lot, even if 2 of them are disadvantaged.
Yeah, but in a lot of games, dual wielding gets negated in the action economy because you need that other action for so many other things. So why would you ever attack with your offhand weapon? So the bonus action economy in D&D, it becomes a problem, because then I can't cast Hunter's Mark this turn or whatever else I wanted to do. Or command your beast to attack.
There's a lot of other things you could be doing with that bonus action besides swinging your dagger that is only 1d4 with no modifier. Yeah.
I also really enjoyed the action economy when I was looking through how to go ahead and stack your quick actions together. I was thinking about combining like the grab action with an attack, right?
With a one-handed attack. Yeah,
exactly. So can I go ahead and, impose disadvantage on their disengage ability to be able to go ahead and get away from me and then punch them with my gauntleted fist, that kind of thing. And even combining shove and attack too. Can I push somebody prone and then attack, that kind of thing? Can I stack my attack and non-attack abilities to advantageously engage my enemy?
For sure. Even just using the sprint actions, it's like my version of dash. It's just a flat 20 feet regardless of your personal movement speed, unless you're in like difficult terrain or something. Yeah. It's just, you get 20 feet, you can just run farther and do a stab if you're a little too far away.
Yeah. I also love that like assist is a full action. So if I'm helping you, it takes my entire being to go ahead and do something. Yeah. But thinking is only a quick action for me. So if I want to go ahead and like figure out which enemy should I be engaged with, I can do that as a quick action and then attack them.
I wanted to jump on real quick. Yeah. You're right. In stacking the quick actions, I love that idea, because grabbing, you have an advantage on melee attacks against the person that you're attacking.
Yeah.
So if you grab with your first action, then with your quick action to attack, where you would be at disadvantage, but you also have advantage, that's going to cancel out, right?
Actually, you only get the disadvantage if you specifically use both to attack.
Exactly. Yeah.
Grab doesn't count as an attack.
So that's what I'm saying. Is that like
shove doesn't count as an attack?
Shove doesn't count as an attack. Grab doesn't count as an attack.
So you'll get to keep the full advantage and not have the attack cancel out.
Not just an offensive action.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm so glad I asked, because that helped me clarify it.
There's also like the whole like halfling throw ability, right? I help you up by helping you up. I pick you up and then I throw you as my attack action.
Sure.
I had a halfling tunnel rat back in 3.5 that dual-wielded hatchets that was designed around being thrown by a half-ogre friend.
There is some real magic in this action economy. So that actually gets us to the end of round 1. So we're going to step aside for a quick commercial break here, and then we'll be back with round 2 of Big Adventure Game with Alex Vigna. Hang on tight. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the middle of the show, everybody. We wanted to take a minute to thank the people who helped make this show possible, our Patreon supporters. We'd like to shout out our adventure level Patreons in particular, so an extra big thanks goes out to Chad Bean, Joe Harney, Dave Rideout, Adam Scaramella, and Marty Napier. Thanks, guys. Patreon supporters get exclusive content, free copies of all of our published and unpublished game supplements, early access to episodes, and free invitations to the monthly games. You can learn more at www.patreon.com/ttjourneys.
Speaking of published material, have you checked out the supplements we have on DM's Guild? We have 2 full books, The Traveler's Guide to Collaborative World Building, The Traveler's Guide to the Multiverse, and you can combine it with all of our supplements to make your next role legendary. Go to www.ttjourneys.com/DM's Guild for more information.
If you're looking for Tabletop Journeys swag or need a fantastic set of new dice, then you should check out the Tabletop Journeys Spring Store and our affiliate, Fanroll Dice. You can make your first purchase through Fanroll at 10% off, and every purchase helps support the show. You can learn more about that at www.ttjourneys.com/fanroll. And if you want to get some awesome t-shirts, hoodies, hats, or other gear, check out www.ttjourneys.com/swag to get redirected to our spring store. These are the same vendors that we use for our add-ons when we do Kickstarters and stand by their products.
But the best way you can support the show is to join in the conversation that we have all over the internet. Did you love one of the episodes? Did you disagree or agree with something that one of us said? Do you wish that we would cover more of your favorite game system? We would love to hear all about it. So check out our social media links at Linktree, that's linktr.ee/Tabletop Journeys, and join the conversation.
We hope you're enjoying this week's show, so here comes the second half. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us. And if that platform lets you, go ahead and leave a comment or a rating. Why not just hit the button and show your support? Thanks again for listening, and now, on with the show.
And we are back for round 2. So, gentlemen, as Lewinique, if you can still find them, Fanroll Dice to the ready.
And
that's a natural 20 for me.
6.
Uh-oh. I believe I got to get a light on this. Hang on.
If you didn't beat a natural 20, Lewinique, then it doesn't matter.
It
2
matters.
digits on the die.
It matters whether or not he beats my 6.
That's true. That's fair.
And it is a natural 20. And the reason why it's difficult is because my natural 20 is a unicorn on my specific Fanroll
I
dice,
see. Yeah.
and you can't see it. All
right.
Fun fact, in Big Adventure Game, one of the things the luck stat is used for is breaking ties.
Yeah, and we already
There's a roll
established
of
that my
D20
luck
plus
is
luck.
like superior. Yeah. So
Yeah, but I have a version of luck that's named after me in my extended family. Let's not get into the fact that it's
yeah, but
bad
it's
luck.
sarcastic. Yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Okay. Josh, what did you roll?
I rolled another natural 20.
Leonika, what did you roll?
I did not roll another natural 20. I, in fact, rolled a
You're trying,
16.
Josh.
We're going to move on to round 2 here with my double natural 20s. I do not think that has ever happened that I rolled 2 natural 20s in a row. That's
At least not on the show during initiative.
certainly not in the show during initiative. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So, Alex, I want to talk about the magic system. I don't want to say lack of a magic system because I feel like you removed a lot of the barriers to your traditional Vancian D&D magic system, right? But you created this whole different way to go ahead and track magic. So the first thing I want to go ahead and get into is I want to have you talk about that a little bit. And then the real question that I want you to answer, though, is that all magic users, in fact, all characters can use magic. They all cast it from the same way, and kind of mechanically, there's no difference between different
and
kinds of
cleric,
magic
yeah.
users. Yeah. Does the system support any sort of mechanical differences between different casters, or by design, is that strictly like a narrative choice based on the features and the spells that you pick?
Yeah, by design, it's meant to be a sort of a strictly lore and flavor thing. You can totally introduce yourself as a wizard, and that word might have connotations in the setting you're in. You can introduce yourself as a priest or a cleric or a paladin, and those things might all mean the same thing, or they might all mean different things, depending on what world you're in. But yeah, there is no such thing as a class exclusive spell in Big Adventure Game. Basically, to go back to the attribute point by again, you start out with a -2 in everything. If you leave your magic at -2 or -1 or 0, you cannot cast spells, except via a magic item or something. If you have a magic stat of at least 1, some spells. For every 1 magic, you have 2 spells, right? And higher magic does unlock some new spells. I'm looking at it right now. The animate corpse spell, you need 2 magic to cast that, so forth, right? But yeah, otherwise you can pick and choose whatever spells you want. I feel like the D&D and perhaps more broadly the Vancian magic idea is if you want to be able to cure wounds, you must worship a god and channel that magic through a god. I think that's a fairly narrow representation of medieval fantasy broadly. If you look at the Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, anyone can learn the cure spell. You don't even need to be a wizard. You can just be a straight up 2-handed battle axe guy, but you still know the cure wounds equivalent, healing, whatever it's called. And you can cast it on yourself, and that's totally cool. You're not going to be able to cast it for very long, but you can do it. Harry Potter, you just say the words and you do it. So there's no exclusivity there. And yeah, that goes for everything. So you can be a wizard who can heal people. You can be a priest who fireballs people, right? Whatever floats your boat. As long as you make that work for your character, it's totally cool. A GM or a setting guide writer could say, hey, in this setting, you need to be a member of this faction or worship this god or whatever to cast this spell. But by default, that is not imposed by the rules.
I think that's really interesting that not only can every character cast magic, but also there's the whole like spell modification aspect to it, where in the D&D like sorcerer-esque model, you can change the magic that you cast depending on how much investment you're willing to go ahead and take in it. It's very freeing. Spellcasters are not in these little tiny tightly defined boxes anymore. It's almost very wild magic-esque, where everyone has this innate magical potential, depending on how much they're willing to go ahead and invest in character development. And I think that it's really interesting. To kind of glom onto the question that I asked in the first round here, the biggest departure for me from D&D, I think, is in the way that you're handling magic, and just in the way that
I would agree.
Like
other than not having classes, I would agree.
Actually, I'm not sure that's actually a huge change, but the way that you do magic in particular, the way you break it all apart mechanically is just wild. So I love it.
Yeah, to clarify. So the way casting a spell works is you have a resource called spell points. You can think of it as mana. You have 5 spell points for every 1 you have in magic. So a wizard who maxes out their magic at the start of the game will have 25 spell points. That's a pretty good pool. And there's a spell called Fire Burst. That's just your standard. One die, you take some fire damage. But if you want to cast something like a fireball, you would do essentially like a meta magic thing. It's very much inspired by D&D's meta magic, where you would increase the spell point cost of that spell, and you would apply a mod called Empowered, where you roll multiple dice, and you would apply a mod called Sphere, which does what it sounds like. It casts the spell within a sphere and hits multiple targets in that sphere. And so there are other ones. There's Cone, if you want to make it more like a Burning Hands. There's Safe if you want to exclude your allies from being crisped. And that works also for healing. If you want to cast healing in an area, you can exclude enemies from being healed with the Safe modification. How much you want to do, your eyes just went.
I loved watching Josh's face just then too.
Yeah, so you could take healing, cast it as a sphere, but then exclude bad guys from it.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise they'd be caught. Oh, that's so cool.
Absolutely. And that goes for most spells. So every spell has a list of mods that are applicable to it underneath.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some where it wouldn't make sense, but it's all right there. It may sound intimidating, but it's one page of rules. It's very simple.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I really like that because while I am fluent, I would say darn near an expert in the Vancian system, I'm also a big fan of non-Vancian systems. Against the Dark Master comes to mind. I really loved that. I played a healer type character when we played, and the mechanic of how that worked was wonderful. I play a priest in DCC Weird West with, friend of the show, Scott Core, and his family. And I love these systems where you're just casting the magic. That just happens. And then in both cases, you're making a roll to see how powerful or not powerful it gets. It's not a set thing. Or there may be some unforeseen consequences if you roll badly enough, and there may be some great consequences if you roll well enough, right? And then you can flavor it however you want. And so with a system like this, I'm really envisioning that. And because Sorcerer is one of my favored magic classes in the 2014 game, I really the fact that you're utilizing those mechanics. I did have a question, though, with the magic attribute that kind of goes along with this. And I'm only asking as a tag-on question because Glenn cheated first, so I'm going to cheat.
It is your turn, Luinica. So
I have another question.
You don't even need to cheat. You can just ask your question.
But I want to cheat. Don't cheat me with my cheating. Really quickly.
I didn't think I cheated. I just thought I asked standard follow-up stuff that we do after every question, personally.
Yeah,
but
I think mine is closer to that than full-on cheating, but you all
See,
be
this
the
is why
judge when
bonus
I'm
actions
done.
are bad.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. I was thinking as you were describing the magic stat, is there a stat you would attribute to being magic sensitive? And in my head, I'm thinking force sensitive, because in beta canon, Han Solo is force sensitive. That's why he was able to not kill himself
Right.
utilizing Luke's lightsaber, but he obviously was not a force wielder. And that's on the minor end of that scale. And then on the major end of the scale, you have the monk from Rogue One, who obviously was force sensitive enough to utilize it in various fashion, but was, again, not a quote unquote force wielder. So
Right.
I was wondering if there was a way to bring that kind of vision to a character, and what would the stat number be for that kind of thing? And would you use spells, but then pick very specific ones and flavor them away? How would that kind of happen?
I would say if you want to go for that kind of like low magic, a latent, untapped, or just like a weak magic, whatever you want to call it, I would say, yeah, go with a magic stat of 1. You have a pretty low spell save. You have 5 spell points. You're not casting all day. And I would pick spells that don't obviously do anything. I would go Detect Life or Detect Magic, Awareness. Spells like that aren't loud and flashy. Telepathy. Yeah, great one. Yeah. Evoke Fear, Evoke Charm, stuff like that. You only get 2 of them to pick from. But there's options for that sort of character. Absolutely. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And
Thief with Sleep.
A Thief with Sleep. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And for the record, in my head, I'm like building characters, and that's what this conversation is helping me do. And I truly hope our audience is doing the same thing. Dear wonderful audience members, if you are listening to this and you're like, oh, I could do this or I could do that, then I'm telling you, that's why we do this thing. That's why we have these kinds of conversations, so we could brainstorm new characters and new concepts.
I want to make a system in a way where picking one thing never locks you out of another thing. Even if 2 things seem diametrically opposed to each other, like some sort of great axe power feature and a stealth-based feature, or a healing spell or something that doesn't usually fit in a theme together, you can still get both of them. You might have to make a weird character build to do it, but it should still be viable and it should still be good. Yeah, I like the creativity.
So y'all covered magic pretty well, and I love the change to spell points in the way that you've set up the system too. My redirect is going to be more of a shout out, because magic relates directly to my absolute favorite feature that I read, which could also work with Leonika's concept that he was just talking about. I just wanted to shout out the feature Blood Magic.
Okay.
Because that is sexy as hell.
Yeah.
Well, the word magic, when preceded by the word blood, is always really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
But mechanically, spend 2 of your own hit points in place of 1 spell point. Oh my goodness. And then when you kill a creature that has blood, you regain 1 spell point as a feat once you pick that up. If you combine that with Leonika's low magic concept guy, he does his low things, but maybe once in a while when he has to push beyond his limits, he has to reach into his own health to be able to make it happen.
Things. Yep.
I freaking loved that feat. Oh my goodness.
Good Lord. Oh my goodness. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, full credit where credit is due. The blood magic in the way it works, but especially in the name. I think the first time I heard the term was in the Dragon Age series of video games, the first one that went back when it came out, Origins. Yeah, and I loved the idea of wizards trying to play by the rules and right in the world and be trusted, but then there's other people out here who like stab people to cast spells, and giving players that option. Obviously, you don't have to be evil about it. It's a game about combat. At the end of the day, you're going to be killing something at some point. But yeah, I had a player take blood magic, and then there's another feature called War God's Favor, which gives you SP and HP on a kill. And they stacked those together. So when they got a kill, they got a bunch of HP and a bunch of SP back. They had almost nothing helping them to get that kill. So it was this interesting balance game where none of their features helped them get a kill. But when they did get a kill, they got a huge reward for it. So it's this kind of gambit.
Yeah, I can also see, just because we've been thinking Dragonlance a lot lately, but like a Raceland Majere style magic user that instead of using their own hit points, uses their vitality to fuel their spell points, that kind of thing. Yeah, Just
Yeah.
so much.
There's a lot of flavor in
There's a
that
lot.
stew.
There's a lot in this magic system. This magic system
Absolutely.
is juicy. It is a juicy burger. So,
Yep.
all right, Lee, when you go.
All right. So my question is all over this entire game and everywhere. I noticed it pretty quickly as I started looking through the cheat sheet you sent us to look at, and certainly looking at the player's handbook. It was very prevalent. I noticed that you used symbols to reflect specific rules often. Now, as content creators, we know word count is king, right? And that page space is king. Clearly, there are some benefits to not having to type this as using your reaction. That phrase is eliminated because you've got a symbol for reaction. Absolutely love that. I think there's a great benefit in doing things like that. I was wondering where the idea of using the symbols for the mechanics would have came from.
Yeah, again, I got to shout out Lancer, the game that obviously heavily inspired the action economy. They also use symbols in a bit of a different way for some things, but their full action, quick action, and free action symbols are almost the same. And then I extrapolated the rest of my own from there. For context, for anyone not looking at the book right now, there's a full action symbol, which is just, it's a diamond that is fully filled in black. If it's a quick action, it's a diamond that is half filled in, transparent on the other side. If it's a reaction, it's got the little arrow hooking to the other side. If it's free action, it's empty, right? And there's a few other symbols. I have a symbol for advantage and disadvantage. And obviously, the word is fine. And I even still use the word just for extra clarity whenever I have the advantage and disadvantage system. But the reason that's a symbol is so that as you're just blasting through this 150-page rulebook, it catches your eye. They're bright green and bright red. It's like, I really want to get advantage on this attack roll. I want to make this character build work. Where's a feature that gives me advantage? And there it is in bright green, this little dot on the page. So that's really helpful. And same thing if you're a GM looking at a monster stat block. I'm looking at the ghoul stat block. The ghoul has advantage on detection checks based on smell. Right there, bright green. You know if somebody's hiding, you can use this to make it your detection check at advantage. And you're less likely to forget that you have advantage and disadvantage or whatever, because it's this little bright, colorful token that's hard to miss. And a lot of that goes back to Lancer originally.
Yeah, I've talked about it on the show. I'm a person who has ADHD, and it does present some interesting challenges when it comes to picking up and working with, dealing with, and playing tabletop games. The way in which information is presented, it has a big impact on how quickly I can or will adopt it. And a lot of our conversations are about, hey, I like what you're saying, but it took me like 4 times to get it. That may not be everybody's experience, but I know there are a lot of people who have similar affectation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Processing as I do. Is there any way we can simplify this so that it's a little easier to pick up without making it harder for other folks, right? So if there's a way to do that, we constantly are looking for the ways to make it easier for all versus just a particular neurotype. And I find symbols like this to be really useful in that process. It was very easy, as you said, to pick out where disadvantage applied, where it didn't. As a visual cue, it also lets me know that whatever I'm looking at on the page, if it's saying these words, these impact the combat economy, or these impact a roll. I liked that kind of thing, but you did the symbols for whether it's a cone attack, whether it's a line attack, whether it's a sphere attack. You also had symbols for the length if something's growing in some fashion or whatever. And they were very well explained, again, on that cheat sheet. All of those things are laid out. So you have this thing that you can have at your side with your character sheet while you're playing. So it's easy when you're looking at a power. Oh, yeah, it does this. It's here until you pick that up. That's the kind of thing that I'm always looking for. I need games to have a legend for me to work with so I get better at the thing.
So, yeah, that's your earlier point about saving space and word count. The way I format, if I want to say that something affects all targets within a sphere with a radius of 10 feet, I don't write that. I put the symbol for sphere and the number 10. And that's just universal shorthand across the whole system. Sphere 10 means sphere with a radius of 10 feet, always. The same thing goes for the line and the cone and the range symbol. If you see the little crosshair followed by 60, you can hit something 60 feet away. Nice and simple. And then the other thing that I did is I highlighted all damage in red and I highlighted all conditions in blue. Am I talking about electricity as the general concept, or am I talking about electric damage? Because it's highlighted in red, that's electric damage. Yeah. And it also saves me from writing the word damage a million times. I never say piercing damage. I just say piercing highlighted in red. Yeah. And 3d6 piercing. Okay, that's what that is.
It's wonderful, and like you said, it flows throughout everything, and it makes it really nice to see that. That's the kind of shorthand that should not go unnoticed.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you guys like it. Yeah. I'm glad it reads well. Like I said, everything's a beta test still, so this is all feedback right now. And yeah, between you guys and some of the playtesters I've had, it's been pretty positive so far that they like the color highlights.
Can I offer one potential counter to colored highlights?
You may.
I only say this, it doesn't just have to be red-green. Red-green is a specific type of colorblind, but colorblindness exists in a number of different ways. And I bring this up, I don't think it's actually too prevalent in your book to be an issue. But there was another game that I was going through, and a friend of mine is red-green colorblind. And they specifically color-coded everything that was applied to a specific attribute. Each attribute had a color, and then every skill or anything else that related back to it had the same color. But the downside being that does not work at all and can actually make the page more confusing for somebody who doesn't see color the same way as everybody else.
My hope is that the way that I've done it here is the only things I ever highlight are red for damage, blue for conditions, and none of the damages and conditions have the same name. My hope is that, okay, it's highlighted, it's either a damage or condition. If you can just remember the names, hopefully we'll be all right. I specifically set it aside so that poison, damage, and I don't have a condition called poisoned. It's called sickened.
Sickened.
So that just that's the condition. Okay. Hopefully, and again, if I'm way off base, by all means, submit some feedback to me. If you're colorblind and this is confusing to you, let me know. But I think I've got it sorted out.
I would agree. I brought it up because this is a beta, and I don't know if you would proceed further down the color rabbit hole per se, just to make sure it was a thought in your head. But I don't think you have too much. The way that you have it organized and the fact that it's not like whole pages of multiple colors, that it is just occasional highlights, I think you'll be totally fine.
Yeah, that's definitely something I took into consideration, specifically with the poisoned and sickened thing. I was like, oh, that could be confusing.
And I did
even
like
if you
that
aren't colorblind and you just forget what the two colors mean, it's an easy mistake to make.
All right. A little prompt from our illustrious host has informed me that I should just roll right into my next question. And I'm going to blow that third wall out just to make sure everybody knows.
Very subtle, Glenn. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Hey, at 6'4", subtlety is my middle name. So my next question is specifically about travel rules. I've seen this in a couple of games, and I think it's a really cool idea and way to add a little bit of narrative flavor and randomness besides just a random encounter table. Specifically, the way that you have it divided up, players on a day where it would be mostly travel get to choose amongst different roles of navigator, scout, lookout, carrier, and forager. I love the idea of having this piece in there. How does that work out? What does it look like? Could you talk to us a little bit about the travel roles and give an in-game example of how you managed some travel for some players using these roles and what it looked like based on their results?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually used this set of travel rules almost verbatim as like a pre-beta test in one of the last 5e campaigns that I ever ran. So this is just pulled over as some old homebrew. And basically, I've never been a huge fan of random encounters. Not to say that I'm not a fan of combat on the road. I think that's usually okay.
It should happen sometimes.
It should happen sometimes, as long as it serves your world building and your story and whatever. But we're fighting this thing because I rolled a 12 on this table. I don't think that's great. So I have it separated into 5 roles: navigator, scout, lookout, carrier, forager. And basically, each player can pick one. Players can double up on them if there's no one to do anything. So one of the roles is carrier. You roll on athletics checks to carry around a heavy object or an unconscious companion, what have you. And sometimes no one needs to do that. So you can have 2 players roll for navigator to really make sure you don't get lost. And sometimes there may not be consequences for a failed roll, right? But there's a lookout. If you're traveling on a completely safe, well-patrolled, guarded road between 2 towns not very far from each other, maybe there's no danger. And so the lookout doesn't fail, and that's fine. But if they do, there's a list of sort of consequences here of what to do about it. I think I probably want to expand on this section a little bit in the fuller version of the book, just to give some better examples of what might happen on a failed roll. But ultimately, it is up to the GM and their world building what happens if someone failed. And also sometimes what happens if someone succeeds. If you're the scout and you roll well on your stealth check ahead of the party to notice enemy patrol on the road, your successful roll there might let you do an ambush if you want to attack them, if you still want to fight or go around them, right? Whatever you want to do. But always I encourage GMs to have encounters on the road as makes sense for the plot, not as was rolled by dice. And I think the system I have here supports that relatively well.
Yeah, when we did our Adventure for the Tower initiative, that first chapter had a series of encounters. We didn't have the encounters be random as much as these were all plotted out. Everything had an impact or had some congruity with the story. But the idea was the GM didn't have to, one, use all of them. They could use one,
right,
two, however many. So they were rolling for which one they used first.
Sure.
Second.
Yeah.
And they may not do a third. And if you're playing this as a one shot, you might only do one, which is what I did when I ran it as a one shot at a convention. But the idea was you're rolling for which of these planned things happened, and they all fit.
And some of them are advantageous as opposed to just negatives.
Yeah, there should be good things on the road too, certainly. And I think that's something that like I would leave up to also a setting guidebook or a campaign module besides just general GM decision, how they want to handle that sort of thing.
Yeah. Guidance in the rules as here's an option of a method of play versus a prescription of this is the way to do it.
Yes. The whole beginning of my Game Master's Guide, it's just called GM Advice. There's a bit about whether or not fighting is necessary, and I literally said, don't just spring random bandit ambushes on your players because it seems like you're, quote, supposed to. Do it is because of part of your story or world building. Who are these bandits? Why are they resorting to violence and crime? Do they serve some greater master? If you have answers to those questions, fight the bandits on the road. If you don't have answers to those questions, don't fight the bandits on the road.
Sound advice.
All right, Alex, I think we're going to go ahead and call it there for this evening. Really excited to be throwing some dice against the system this weekend, and that will be what comes out on the channel next week is the start of the actual play of Big Adventure Game with Alex here. Before we let you go, for our listeners out there, where can they find the beta rules that you're throwing at us, and where can they find out more about Big Adventure Game?
Yes, easy to find. All of my stuff as a content creator on the internet is under a brand called Spellbook Gaming. You can go to spellbookgaming.com and you can click on the thing that says Big Adventure Game right on the homepage, and you'll find everything there. If you want to play the game with me, I'm doing play tests as part of the beta. You can sign up for those. We have a Discord server where we handle all that sort of thing. So you just need a Discord account, and you can fill out a Google form and sign up, and hopefully we'll get to play together and credit it as a play tester and all that. In addition to that, I do a podcast called Roll for Distraction where I play other RPGs. It started out as a D&D show. And then, as I said, we've played Lancer, we've played Monster of the Week, we've played Cyberpunk Red, and we're currently playing a game called Salvage Union, which is a lot of fun, also about big robots.
Yep.
So, yeah, check all that stuff out. Spellbookgaming.com, all one word, no spaces or anything. YouTube.com/@spellbookgaming.
Yes. Having backed the Salvage Union Kickstarter myself, I had the rulebook right here. But I'm very excited to go ahead and hear that there's a Salvage Union actual play.
Check it out. Yeah, the author actually reached out to me and was like, hey, we saw you played Lancer. You like big robots. You want to play this? I'm like, yeah.
Yes, I do.
I have one final question for my co-hosts.
Ooh, okay.
Do either of you have any thoughts on the pre-made character list for what you're going to play?
I have a whole lot more thoughts now than I did before this interview. So I will toss that out there. That I thought that I knew what I wanted to go ahead and do, and now I don't know.
I am desperately rethinking my thoughts.
Yeah.
I'll send you guys an email. I think I want to give you a couple of improvement points to get your role, and they let you pick a second feature or something because of your experience. So
Love it.
Yeah. Alex, thanks so very much again for joining us tonight. And everybody, we will be back next week with our actual play of Big Adventure Game. So make sure you go ahead and tune in and check that out. But in the meantime, thanks all for listening to our interview here with Alex Vigna. We'll talk to you again then. So have a good night.
Good night, all.
Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us. This has been Tabletop Journeys. We would love to hear your feedback on our show today. Join us at www.ttjourneys.com, where you can subscribe to the blog to leave comments and see all the content that we publish beyond the podcast.
You can also stay in touch by subscribing to our Twitter, Tumblr, or Instagram at TT Journeys, joining our Facebook group, Tabletop Journeys, or by sending an email directly to podcast@ttjourneys.com. Our full episodes come out every week on Friday, and every Tuesday features actual play and gameplay showcase episodes. Looking for early access? You can support the show and get episodes before everyone else at www.patreon.com/ttjourneys. Check it out today and see all the awesome benefits we bring to our supporters.
Lastly, if you're listening to us on Stitcher, iTunes, Podchaser, Spotify, or Audible, we would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to the podcast on that platform. Thank you for listening and for being a part of our growing community. And we bid you fair tides, friends, for legends await.